I believe that a lot of MMO gamers currently think that Ashes of Creation is going to be for them, but I also believe that at some point there will be a crushing reality and we'll realize that it's not for everybody. That's what Steven tells us, and you know what? It is okay. But in this video, let's talk about 5 reasons that the game might not be for you, or the kind of player that the game won't be for. And the first reason is PvP. Now, I'm not going to fully explain the system here, but Ashes of Creation features an open world PvP environment where players can engage in combat with each other almost anywhere in the world. And that's one of the main things here. It's not possible really to play this game and never be at risk of being PvP'd. It's always going to be possible that if you're just chopping down trees or doing whatever the hell you like, you might get killed. However, to deter unwarranted aggression and add consequence, the game actually adds a corrupted system. Players who attack others unprovoked become corrupted. This in turn then makes that they're going to be susceptible to bounty hunters. There's going to be death penalties when you die. It actually lowers your stats, I believe. All kinds of bad stuff happens when you're corrupted. I don't want to fully explain it here. And the idea is pretty simple. They are trying to balance the freedom and the consequence within the PvP. But there will always be an omnipresent threat of being killed by another player, and that can be daunting and off-putting for a lot of people. The way it sort of works, by the way, is that you will be a non-combatant by default. You can also flag up and become a combatant, and you can also have a third category, which is the corrupted. Now, what happens is anybody who attacks the non-combatant, somebody who doesn't want to be PvP'd, if you do not fight back and they kill you, that person will basically become corrupted, which, as we said, comes with negative consequences. Now, the key thing there is going to be how balanced is that system? Is it ever going to be worth killing somebody who's a non-combatant who doesn't actually want to be attacked? And if it's not, then what's the difference between just a normal flagging system or not having a flagging system? But then if the penalty isn't severe enough, what's to stop maybe a couple of players taking turns all griefing the same person? That corrupted system is going to be very, very important. But I will say the very nature of just being able to be in the open world and to be attacked and PvP'd is going to put so many people off. And that's fine, that's the game they are making. But if you are one of these people who do not want to be attacked at any point, you don't like that risk, then it's very possible that Ashes of Creation will not be for you. That doesn't mean they should change the game. It's just worth knowing, okay? And the next thing I want to talk about is solo play, or the lack thereof. So for a lot of people, this is actually positive. Again, this doesn't make there's like a right or wrong situation here, but Ashes of Creation has a lot of emphasis on guild participation and community-driven objectives and events. The territory control system and large-scale wars are pretty much all guild-related. Caravans are probably going to also be guild-related, and this focus means that players who prefer to play solo, they might find it challenging to access some of the game's content, or they might simply feel left out of major events that are shaping the world. Now, I know what many of you people are going to say. You're going to say, hey, this is an MMO, the social element is important, and that's something that you like. And that is completely fine and understandable. It's just worth understanding that some players like to play sort of solo and have multiplayer be adjacent to them. You know, maybe you want to play an MMO, do mostly solo leveling, gathering and all that kind of stuff, but occasionally do a dungeon. If there's too much guild content or group content in general, it might simply mean that that type of player doesn't feel that they can contribute in any meaningful way. Now, I sort of feel like as a solo player, you can probably still have an impact, but it's worth noting that there'll be some content that you're probably going to be excluded from. Hopefully, though, it's not too sort of like gate kept. And I think, you know, the caravans, for example, nothing can really stop you attacking that, apart from maybe if you attack it and then they don't like the fact that you attacked it and you get attacked in return. But, you know, you can participate, I guess, if you want to. So the first two that we just spoke about there, the always on style PvP and guild centric gameplay, a lot of you are going to be like, oh, only people who are casuals don't want that. And I fundamentally disagree with that. There will be some hardcore players who want to play like 12, 14 hours a day, who simply don't want the PvP and maybe will want to play in a more solo way. It doesn't by default mean that you are casual. However, this next one might do. I think Ashes of Creation might be a grindy game. Now, it's very early to talk about that because we're not even in Alpha 2 yet, but when I look at the game, I think it's sort of setting out the idea that it's going to be quite grindy. The way that the Ashes of Creation leveling system appears to be designed is that it's going to require many many hours of work to progress in leveling. I can't remember the exact number, but it's estimated to be somewhere between like 200 and 300 hours just to level to max level. Now, whilst that design choice is going to ensure that it'll feel significant and rewarding when you hit milestones, it might simply mean that players who have limited gaming time or gamers who prefer games with quicker progression might feel that it's a little bit grindy, and that in turn might be a deterrent. If you're somebody who can only play 3 hours a night, you know, because you have a real job, you've got wife and kids and all this kind of jazz, or a husband and kids, whatever, you might just think, oh, I can never really compete in that game. The amount of reward that you get from the time invested is too high, and I don't have the time to invest, therefore I can't really participate. And sure, I know a lot of you will be like, well, don't make the game too casual friendly, you have to work for your rewards and achievements, and I think that's the counterpoint. It's true, typically, that if you are just given things for free, it doesn't feel very rewarding or meaningful. Feeling like you earn something and you achieve something is part of the reward itself. The only caveat with that is if you go too far, then the people who are your casual audience might simply just not bother at all. And overall, I do think that Ashes of Creation is not going to be the most amazing casual friendly game, but I would be surprised to learn that Intrepid would be against people who want to play 3 hours an evening. They quite simply are the majority of the MMO player base. In fact, they're the majority of gaming player base, I believe. Excluding them would be a big risk. They have to feel like they can participate and be rewarded, and they probably can, but there's no way of knowing right now. The leveling is just an indication that we might have a problem if you are that sort of time deprived, which is very understandable. And the next thing is just one of those where when you hear it, I know a lot of gamers are going to be like, oh hell nah. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be that bad of a system, but it is talking about the leveling experience debt. Now, some MMOs in the past have literally de-leveled you as you die. Ashes of Creation, thankfully, is not planning on doing that. But what happens when you do die? Not in every game mode. There's going to be some game modes, like maybe if they have like an arena or the wars where this doesn't actually count. But if you die in the open world, you get an experience debt. And I think it goes up to about 2 or 3% of the level. You don't get de-leveled, you just sort of have to get the experience to get this stats back. And that's what happens, right? All that happens when you have an experience debt is that you basically lose a little bit of power. And that means that recovering from setbacks can be time consuming, I would have to assume, if the leveling process is that long. And I think for a lot of people, especially casuals again, I think it's just going to make the game, you know, like immediately off-putting. It might also mean that you sort of tend to not take risks, which to be fair, this game is all about risk versus reward, so maybe that makes sense. I actually don't think that this system will be really that bad. Like 2 to 3% of a level, I don't think it's anything going to be like super punishing, but again, for a certain group of players, that's going to just be, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And again, that's understandable. Now, number 5 on the list isn't something that I believe at all, really. I don't think it's a problem. I actually quite like it. But for some gamers, what will be an issue is the fact that they have to pay a sub fee. So if you don't know, Ashes of Creation is going to be buy to play and then a sub fee every month, I believe. And while this model does support the game's development and maintenance, and it means that the game can definitely not rely on something like pay to win, I think it can be a significant barrier for some players who are accustomed maybe to like free to play games or buy to play games, and they might simply just be hesitant to put the investment into this. A lot of the time they feel like it's a bit of a risk. If you buy that monthly sub, you sort of feel compelled to play the game. Otherwise, you are effectively losing your money. If you pay and you don't play, you've wasted your money. And I do think that the subscription fee might limit the game's accessibility to a broader audience again. There will be people who are unwilling to pay a sub fee, and there will be another group of people who are unable to pay for a sub fee. And really, I guess it's those people that I would feel the most sorry for. What I would say is that the game is going to have regional pricing. Details of that are obviously being like worked out, but if you live in a country like Brazil, I believe was used as an example, you're not going to be paying American monthly price in dollars, because that would be a lot of Brazilian currency. I'm not going to explain exchange rates and stuff like that here and cost of living, but essentially it'll be sort of relatively priced in Brazil to the average wage. And that makes sense, and that might help with the people who are unable to pay. But there's always going to be people who I think who want to play, maybe have the computer to do so, maybe have the time, but don't have the funds. But I actually don't think that's the main issue. I think it's just a sort of like mental thing of, oh, I've paid for the sub fee, now I feel like I have to play. and I don't like that feeling. Therefore, I'm just not going to pay. For me, I think it makes perfect sense. I don't mind paying in a sub to play game. As long as you get actual good servers, as long as you get like game masters that are looking out for you and stuff like that, and as long as you get content, then I think it's perfectly fine and reasonable. Paying to play a video game just makes sense, as long as you're not getting milked too hard. I know that this list might simply put a lot of you into a mind space of like, hey, he just thinks that casuals don't want to play this game, and that might be true. Oh, he's a PvE Kerber and he doesn't want to play it. Oh, my man's just broke and doesn't want to pay for the sub fee. Oh, he's bad at the game, he's going to die in PvP and then have the experience debt. Oh, he's a gamer dad who just doesn't have the time to play. Might actually be true. But I'm still excited about Ashes of Creation. I just think we need to start communicating that this game is not going to be the savior to everybody's MMO experience. It simply can't be, and it won't be. And I think these 5 reasons are probably the core 5. Let me know if I missed any in the comments below. For now, have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.